And so begins the stretch run to the IndyCar Championship. Stop one of the West Coast swing is in Portland, Oregon. An exciting day one at Portland. Let's talk about it and what will happen tomorrow. And welcome back to the channel, but not scenic Portland, Oregon, unfortunately. We're back here in my office. The IndyCar West Coast swing this year, I kind of made a decision. In fact, before really the season began, or as the season kind of played out, as some races got delayed, obviously, that were on the West Coast, I hadn't been planning on going to those races anyway, except for Long Beach. But, you know, I kind of looked at a cost-benefit analysis of doing that race this year, and just decided that really the entire West Coast swing was probably going to stretch my budget too far, even just to do one race, unfortunately. So it'll be remote coverage, unfortunately, for these three events to cap off the season. But don't worry, the in-person coverage of motorsports is not done for this year. I think I've got at least 4 events I've got planned to cover later on this year in person, so don't worry. And hopefully I'll bring you guys the coverage that you guys expect, even though I'm going to be a bit remote. Now, Portland, obviously a 3-week break in between the very eventful race we witnessed at Gateway and this race. Kind of a traditional IndyCar event, despite the fact that it hasn't been on the schedule very consistently in the last 10 years. Obviously, they didn't run the race last year, but we kind of go into this with, I think, the real storyline, and it is this, the championship fight. And I think the championship fight really, I don't want to say this because Scott Dixon is involved, but I believe that it is between 2 drivers, and those drivers are Alex Palou and Pato O'Ward. And this race certainly is setting up that particular confrontation, of course, with Dixon in there as the spoiler. Now, Palou qualified on the pole today, his first official pole of the series. Of course, he was awarded a pole at Texas earlier this year, but obviously he did not earn this one. This is his first earned pole, and that's what Alex Palou needs to do. Obviously, he got taken out at Gateway when really, quite frankly, he was running exactly the kind of race he needed to run to retain the championship lead. And if you think about it, a lot of the Alex Palou, I guess you could call them mistakes, haven't been mistakes at all. He blew an engine at the Indy GP. He got taken out at Gateway. So if he can control this race, I think Alex Palou is really going to set himself up as really the favorite to win the championship. And I would say, you know, over the last few weeks or the last few races, the championship momentum has really swung in Pato O'Ward's favor. So the fact that Palou has really kind of grabbed it by the, I want to say that, fine, I'll say it, grabbed it by the nuts and kind of taken back control seemingly of this championship, despite being currently second, is really spectacular. And if he does end up winning the championship, it's because he appears to be recovering quite nicely from a lot of the adversity he suffered in the last couple of weeks. Now, I do think that the advantage, unfortunately, for both Pato and Palou is that they're the young Chargers. The disadvantage is that the experience very much falls in the hands of guys like Scott Dixon and Joseph Newgarden, who did not have a very good day today. But if you look at, you know, Scott Dixon has, you know, 20 years of experience on tracks like Long Beach and Laguna Seca and Portland, even though he didn't run there consecutively throughout those 20 years. I mean, he's got way more experience. He's just a more experienced IndyCar driver. He's beaten much more experienced drivers at this stage in their career. So, you know, you look at Dixon starting 3rd tomorrow. I think that's another one where you go, okay, yeah, he's just sticking in there. He's being the Terminator again. But I want to talk about a few more drivers throughout the field, and we will get back to O'Ward because there's a point I want to make about O'Ward qualifying in 7th today. Alexander Rossi on the front row. Now, obviously, Rossi has not had a good season. A lot of it, again, well, you know, it's kind of 50-50. Half of it is driver error, and half of it is just plain bad luck. I think you look at the Indianapolis 500 is a great example of that, where it looked like he was going to be very much a contender, had a bad yellow fall his way, got trapped laps down and never recovered. So starting on the front row, Feels very 2019. Alexander Rossi, once again, missed out on pole by hundredths of a second. So, the question is going to be, how hard does he want to race Palou? Can he get a jump on Palou going into turn one? Because I think Palou is going to be very, very cautious, rightfully so. And Rossi currently has nothing to lose, and he certainly has nothing to lose by wrecking into any and all of the Ganassi drivers. Aero McLaren SP. Felix Rosenqvist qualified fourth for the race, or he'll start alongside of Scott Dixon, so watch out for that. But he's had quite a resurgence in the last few weeks. One of the things I even asked him about, I think it was at the GP of Indy, you can see the interview on my channel, was, where is the pace and where can you find the pace? And in fact, I think it was at this very track at Portland where they had a good test, they found something, and they began bringing it to a lot of the races in this kind of end swing of the season. And you've seen Rosenqvist really elevate his game quite a bit. In fact, he might have elevated it a bit too much because he bumped Pato O'Ward out of the Fast Six. And why is that important at Portland? Well, I think you generally want to start up front at Portland because there is a big tradition at Portland. Maybe not as traditional as the Cleveland turn one, lap one pileup, but certainly there are many examples throughout the year of Portland tearing up a lot of race cars, and a lot of those race cars being torn up mid-pack. In fact, the last time we raced at Portland, it was what is now known as the Aero McLaren SP cars getting taken out in one fell swoop. So that's what a Pato O'Ward or a Joseph Newgarden or Marcus Ericsson, who are starting a little bit further back in the field, are really going to want to avoid. Graham Rahal, 5th place. Now, Graham Rahal, we know, has talked quite a bit about his qualifying pace on the road courses being a detriment. He races really well, but hasn't been able to qualify. Well, he qualified well here at Portland. Why? Well, I speculated right before he actually gave an interview and said it that the addition of Oliver Askew to the Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan team helped out significantly, and it appears to have done that. Askew qualified in 9th position, Rahal in 5th. Not too bad for the first race of that driver combination. And it makes a little bit more sense as well because Marshall Pruitt has reported both on his podcast and in his silly season report that there's a bit of a driver rivalry, at least within the team, about who's going to get the 45 for next year. And Bobby Rahal, of course, the team owner, is very much on Askew's side. And it makes a little more sense if Askew can drive Graham's setup and get more data or double the data that Graham can use to really be the team leader and expand his role as the team leader. And one of the reasons I do know this, because I remember them talking about it way back in like 2013, 2014 when Graham returned to Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. And Graham couldn't drive any of the setups that Takuma Sato had left with the team when he left in 2012 to go to AJ Foyt. So when Takuma returned to the team, you did have a bit of a clash. I think one of the few places where Takuma and Graham can drive the same setup is Indianapolis, and you can see their results there. They're very quick. But on the road courses, they're going in 2 different directions. I'm not breaking any news here. This is fairly common knowledge at this point. But I think in a lot of ways, with the apparent exit of Takuma Sato at Rahal, as far as I'm aware, he will be driving somewhere else next year, probably part-time. I think I mentioned Shank in the silly season video. I still stand by that at the moment. Sounds like maybe a third car for Shank at the 500. But it seems like the opportunity has presented itself for Rahal to restructure its team and help Graham out a little bit more. Remember, of course, he's the namesake of the team. His father owns it. It shouldn't really be a surprise that they're going to try to get him the best possible teammates. And I wonder, because as we've seen now with Askew, it seems like Askew raises the performance level of Graham. I wonder if Askew, Graham, and then, of course, Jack Harvey, who is still not announced, but we're expecting him to be at that team, all can drive similar setups. And therefore, if you put all 3 of those drivers together at the same team, you could have a really potent 1, 2, 3 punch with all those drivers generating similar data and being able to create one super setup for a super team. Now, a name kind of rounding out the Fast Six that formerly was associated with Rahal through his dad and, well, I guess also through racing GTLM for the team, Colton Herta. he qualified on blacks. And I believe, I could be wrong on this one, sometimes the tire rules are weird, but I believe he'll have to start on the tires that he qualified on. So Colton Herta qualified on blacks and theoretically would start the race on blacks. It's going to be interesting to see how that strategy call plays out, because there is a bit of a question of whether over the course of a stint length, the blacks or the reds are going to be the faster tire. It's a 110 lap race, long race. If you think about the lap times are around a minute, so it's going to be about a 110 or so minute race if it goes green to the end. But as we know, IndyCar races a lot of times have caution, so it could be a longer race than that. So that's interesting. So perhaps Andretti Autosport with Colton Herta thinks that their best opportunity to win the race is to get the black tire stint done early and then go reds to the end. Maybe they used up too many of their red sets as well. I feel like I'm going to get an angry text message from Colton Herta after saying this on my video. Why did you just ask me that? That could happen. So this is another interesting point, and it has championship implications. No Penske qualified higher than 14th. That's shocking to me. And to make matters worse, their championship hope, Joseph Newgarden, 18th place. Yeah, that's not good. Because, again, like I said, Portland, traditionally, big crash on the start. With 27 cars, that's the most cars that have raced at this race since 1999. So we really haven't seen this for a very long time at Portland. And generally speaking, if you look at how the kart races started there, they started with a big crash. And in fact, the last two IndyCar races at the track have started with a big crash. So if Joseph Newgarden can survive turn one, he may have a good points day. But it's going to be an uphill struggle, I think, for Joseph Newgarden. And this could be a race where he continues to lose points and really has to pour it on at Laguna and Long Beach and hope for a little bit of bad luck for his championship rivals. Speaking of bad luck, there could be some bad luck for Joseph's championship rivals, and really it could be a good news for anyone with a bow tie on their car. Honda seems to have had some engine problems throughout this season. We've noticed it quite a bit with Alex Palou. I almost did the same thing NBC did, and screw those guys up. Alex Palou has had, what, 2 grid spot penalties this year for engine changes that were unapproved. I think one of them was because of crash at Indianapolis, but the other one was definitely for the engine going pop at the second Grand Prix of Indianapolis. 2 more Honda engine failures today, or at least things that necessitated an exchange of the Honda motors and thus a grid penalty for Takuma Sato and Ryan Hunter-Reay. You look at the championship guys up front, which of course are all Ganassi drivers, with Palou and Dixon and Ericsson on kind of the outside of a periphery of winning the championship, all Honda powered. Now, I'm not saying that they're all going to go pop, but you could theoretically, let's say Scott Dixon blows a motor tomorrow. That could mean big-time championship swings. Or what if Alex Palou blows another engine, has to take another grid spot penalty? That's also going to be the thing that may factor into this championship. You take a grid spot penalty, you're further back on the start at, say, Long Beach, a tight street circuit where we know that calamity can strike. I don't know. That could be a factor, reliability. So maybe there's an advantage for the Chevy teams going into the stretch run of the championship. We'll have to see. So, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow to talk about what goes down at the Portland Grand Prix. I should mention before we go, it is 9/11. Certainly, the 20-year anniversary of that tragedy, which quite frankly had such long-reaching implications for not only the United States, but the global society that we now live in. Very sad, and certainly we're thinking of all the folks who lost loved ones in that tragedy, and as well the wars that followed it. Just not a great moment for sure, but a lot of heroic folks as well. The first responders that were able to save so many lives and gave up their lives, as I guess we used to say at the Indianapolis 500, unselfishly and unafraid. So we're thinking of those guys on this very somber anniversary. Thank you, guys.